All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Greta Christina. Greta is a writer whose work has been seen in Alternate, Ms. Magazine, and The Skeptical Inquirer. She's the author of several books. Her latest is Comforting Thoughts About Death That Have Nothing to Do with God, which you can find at freethoughtsblog.com/Greta. You can also find her on Twitter at Greta Christina. Greta, thank you so much for being on the show again. All right, so Greta, again, your new book is Comforting Thoughts About Death That Have Nothing to Do with God. I guess my first question for you is, what led you to write this book?
Well, when I was letting go of my own religious and spiritual beliefs, letting go of a belief in an afterlife was one of the most difficult things about it. And I didn't, at the time, know anything about the existence of an atheist community, a humanist community. And I didn't know about atheist and humanist philosophies about how you cope with death and how you cope with your own mortality, how you cope with the death of people you love. And so I kind of had to go through it alone. I kind of had to reinvent the wheel and come up with my own philosophies and approaches, to death and ways of adjusting to it and, having some kind of peace with it. And I don't want other people to have to do that. I don't want to it was a pretty traumatic time, and I don't want other people to have to do that. I do think that there are, a wide variety of humanist and atheist and skeptical ways of viewing death that can give us some kind of comfort and can give us some kind of peace. And I want to be able to offer those to other people who have left religion or are in process of leaving it.
One of the things that's sort of a through line, I think you have 3 or 4 chapters, I think it's 3 on this, is just the very idea from a non-believer's perspective of just the very meaning of death. You have many chapters on this. I actually say part 1 of many, part 2 of many. So I guess let's delve into this. What are from an atheist, skeptic, non-believing standpoint, discuss the meaning of death?
Well, it's true. We talk a lot about the meaning of life, and I think that it's worth talking about the meaning of death. And as humanists and atheists and skeptics, we make our own meaning. We make our own meaning about life, and we make our own meaning about death. So it's not like there's some external meaning that's handed to us, and it's not like I'm going to sit here and tell you, this is what death means to you. We craft our own meaning. And certainly for me, there's a number of things that have made death, that have given me some meaning around death. One of them is the idea of death as a deadline. For me, I would love to think that if I were immortal, I would do all kinds of wonderful things with my life. Spend, 60 years, learning to be a doctor, and I'd spend another 60 years, reading all kinds of great literature, and I'd spend another 60 years doing, charitable works, and I'd do another 60 years traveling the world or whatever. I know myself. I would spend immortality sitting on the sofa watching television because there's no sense of pressure, right? It's like I can do all that wonderful charitable and literature and travel stuff. I can do that later because I have all the time literally in the world. Knowing that I'm mortal is what creates a sense of urgency for me, and it gives me a sense that if there's things I want to do with my life, I really need to do them now. And it's what makes me want to really enjoy my life and really savor it, and it's also what makes me want to do good things for other people, because other people's lives are limited too. And, if somebody is born into poverty and despair, they have one short life and it sucks. That's not okay with me, and it motivates me to try to make other people's lives better as well.
So you say, you yourself have dealt with this. You've looked into different communities that deal with this. Talk about some of the ways that non-believers deal with, say, like the fear of death, and even like some dealing with the grief that happens after someone dies.
Sure. There's lots of different ways. There's lots of different approaches to death. One of the ones that I hear most commonly is when people are dealing with their fear of death is realizing that being dead isn't going to be any different from not having been born yet. It's not going to be terrible. It's not going to be torture. It's not a thing to be afraid of. Certainly we can value life and want it to continue, but the state of being dead is not any different from not having been born yet, and not having been born wasn't in any way upsetting or traumatic or difficult. But I think that there's also kind of this paradox, which is that I think that accepting that, of course, we're afraid of death. Of course, we want to live. We're animals. We evolved from hundreds of millions of years of other animals who really, really wanted to live. Wanting to live is a, Darwinian survival technique. And so I think that, I know that a lot of religious believers feel a certain sense of guilt or shame about the fact that they're afraid of death and about the fact that they grieve very deeply when the people that they love die. Because theoretically, they think that, well, this is just a temporary break. I'm going to see them again in a few years. And yet they're grieving as if they're never going to see them again. I think that as atheists and humanists, we can accept death, but we can also accept the fact of grief and the fact of fear of death, that this is a natural thing, that we evolved again. We evolved to be afraid of death and to want to survive, and that we don't have to be ashamed of that.